Welcome to the July the 5th, 2014 Beyond Bitcoin Community Dev Hangout. This recording is a group of people just getting together talking about crypto. Dan Larimer shows up as usual. He gives us the status of Bitshares and hangs around and answers questions. We invite anyone who is interested in participating to show up on the Saturdays at 10 a.m. Central. All of this is put into the public domain if you wish to use it for your own content. And here we go.
Can you still hear me?
We can still hear you. Welcome, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Can you give us any updates on how everything's going over in the Bitshares world?
This has been a pretty amazing week with some major breakthroughs in our testing process for Bitshares. For those of you who have not been following along, we are now on dry run 7, which is 15-second blocks. And we have been running for several days now with very high participation, 90% or so delegate participation. We successfully survived a hard fork caused by a bug that we checked in. We recovered from it, and the chain goes on. So this is a very good sign because it means that all the forking issues that we've been having over the past dry runs have been more or less resolved. And we have a stable system. It's somewhat usable. The Qt web GUI that people are downloading and using and are able to create accounts, send funds to each other, all without any need to use a public key or address. Lots of people are creating assets and transferring them between each other. It appears that we have a, for the subset of features that are working, a fully functional system that could be used as a competitor to some of the existing systems out there, such as Next.
So is it going to come out essentially with like the Bitshares ME type of functionality?
We are rapidly adding features, and when someone decides to release, they're going to clone our code and launch it independent of anything we are doing. So I happen to know that there is a company out there that is looking to launch Bitshares X, and when it launches, it will probably have whatever subset of features we have implemented at that point in time, with plans to upgrade to the full version with the bit assets as soon as that's available. These past day or so, I have been implementing the bid ask system. So you can now create bids, create asks, and cancel them. The market matching is not implemented yet, but that should be a relatively quick feature to implement. And then there's the short orders and covering. Both of those, if everything goes smoothly, I would expect that by the time I'm talking to you next week, we will be having a dry run testing the market functionality.
Sounds cool. Now, so if you guys don't mind, I want to ask a real quick question. I want to kind of go back to basics occasionally, like at least like on one topic every week, and about this type of situation. When it comes out, it's, as I understand it, it will have Bitshares ME type of functionality, which is, could you give people an understanding of what Bitshares ME is going to be for and how to use it?
Bitshares ME is really just a way of issuing personal shares. It's a way of tracking your debt with your friends and family and transferring it between each other. It's a way to crowdfund some project you're working on. Or if you are a large company like Overstock, it's a way of backing your company shares backing a crypto asset with company shares. It can do all of the above. Now, what we'd like to do with the Bitshares X chain is to reserve the assets issued on it for high-profile user-issued assets, such as perhaps Overstock or Made Safe or some of these other projects that are coming out. The really big ones are the ones that we want on there in trading. And then Bitshares ME is going to be another chain that's going to be geared toward anyone issue anything at any time. I think the user experience of logging into the system and seeing a lot of high-profile ones without a bunch of spam from everybody and their uncle creating sex and hope and pretty girls. Okay, fine, you can have some fun transferring that stuff around, but we want to try to reserve the Bitshares X chain with the bit assets to focus primarily on the bit assets, bit gold, bit dollars, and bit BTC, along with the high-profile IPOs.
So Bitshares, this is actually Bitshares X in for the functionality you're talking about, actually creating the chains that are going to have the bit assets on them, and Bitshares ME is going to be a subset that's going to be later released.
Right, in the interest of not flooding the market with too many things at once, I think it's best to focus on Bitshares X, and then after that's matured a little bit, the user experience has gotten greatly improved. Then it's time to allow the end user to issue their own assets and do all that.
So who's going to be able to create a chain, essentially? I mean, who can go out and create a chain with bit assets?
Anyone can take our code and do that.
And is it essentially the same as creating an altcoin, but what would you say the equivalency would be with regard to development expertise?
Well, considering we're going to have a complete how-to manual, it's as if Bitcoin came with a manual of how to create clones of itself. It involves changing some numbers in some files and editing some JSON to configure your initial allocation. So it's pretty easy to clone. It's the bigger challenge to cloning is actually getting the community and market acceptance and support of your chain.
So it sounds like essentially like how Bitcoin is set up currently. You almost have there's probably a guide somewhere, but it's a bunch of different material that you'd have to compile together to be able to do it on your own if you haven't a lot of experience. So you're saying this will pretty much give every user who wants to create an alt chain the ability to learn how to do it from the ground up, and it essentially lowers the barriers to entry so everybody can profit a little bit more off of using blockchain technology. Is that fair?
It's fair, and there are many different applications. For some people, Bitshares ME makes it almost issuing your own chain almost irrelevant. You just issue assets on an existing chain, and you allow the existing chain to, and the delegates on that chain to do all the work of securing, marketing, and promoting what you're doing. So the people who are going to want to create their own chain are going to do so for reasons such as the transaction fees are getting too high because there's too much demand on one chain, or they need a new set of rules that aren't baked into an existing chain. An example of where I think our technology is going to be more useful than any of the other clones or other blockchain technology is if you're a company, say, you can use Overstock for an example, and want to issue shares and have shareholders vote, and otherwise use blockchain technology as a replacement for your corporate books. Bitshares will be a better foundation for that because we've got user accounts. You send and transfer to names. With a few small tweaks, you can require all names to be registered through a central authority. So you can maintain some privacy while at the same time allowing the owners of the company to comply with as many regulations as possible right there in the code. So if you're going to use some of these other technologies, well, now you need miners to secure it. Well, that's a big waste. You can't do that. Or you're relying on NXT's system for proof of stake. So there's a real advantage to having our approval voting system and all that other stuff baked into the cake.
Do you have something to say, Brent? I'm noticing the lips turn bright red.
Sorry, I had my left mouse button and I thought it would push to talk. I'll have to use a different key to push to talk. Sorry.
It's okay. We kind of learn the hard way a lot of the time. That's all good. So essentially, it seems to me like there's going to be the ability if somebody takes the time to actually learn how to do this stuff and master how to make these chains, there are going to be jobs openings for stuff like this. There's room for making a lot of money going in and actually doing this for businesses. Is this over the top thinking, or is that kind of what I'm gathering from what you're saying?
My personal business model as a company is to focus on customizing the software solutions. We are a software company first and foremost. We are not the company that is launching these DACs. These DACs get launched by other people in friendlier jurisdictions. We just provide accounting software that can be used to do accounting for companies. Use at your own risk as far as the regulatory environment is concerned. Our goal is to enhance it with more and more features so that eventually it can do all your tax accounting for you, maybe. And these are the things that are going to be required to get mainstream acceptance. And once you realize that blockchain technology is not about one or two big chains, but instead you can use a blockchain for every single organization out there. And how many organizations are there out there today?
At least 12.
Yeah, but even clubs and churches, babysitter clubs, neighborhoods, small towns, they can use this type of system for governance. You can have it set up so the delegates who are running it are also simultaneously running for various positions or offices in a small town or club or whatever. So there's lots of things you can do with this once you have a lightweight, trustworthy accounting system.
It sounds cool. And it's interesting to see how you can essentially layer it over pretty much everything. Now, out of curiosity, and this might be a little bit of a turn, but you guys use C++ code, right?
Yes, for all the back-end stuff.
I don't recall ever having anybody have asked you why you chose C++. Was there a reason why C++ was chosen over like some of the other solutions out there?
Primarily because C++ is the most cross-platform language out there. You can run it on all platforms, and if there is a difference in a platform, it's really easy to handle those cases. Whereas with Java, it claims to be cross-platform, but the reality is it's not cross-platform. there are places where it doesn't line up right. And when it doesn't line up right on all platforms, it is a real challenge to work around those cases. The other issue is with the libraries I've created for doing asynchronous cooperative multitasking, it greatly simplifies the code and readability. So I actually have a lot of the features with reflection and other things right there in the C++ that you don't normally associate with C++. And that's just because of the toolkit I created before starting this project. And lastly, well, there's two other reasons. Virtual machines are another layer of insecurity. If your virtual machine gets compromised, your code can be compromised. There's a layer between you and the hardware. So you'd like to code directly to the hardware. The other thing you'll notice with these systems is that performance is everything. We are fundamentally limited by cryptographic operation performance, as well as database performance and memory constraints. And using a virtual machine, such as Java or C# would significantly, it add some overhead to what we're already trying to do, which is to keep this stuff as lightweight as possible and as performant as possible. And last but not least, C++ is the language that I have 20 years of experience in. So it's the language I wanted to use. Any other language would have required me to learn the best practices before we could develop it.
Roger. It's just interesting because a lot of the time people don't talk about, I really personally don't hear it spoken about much at all, what languages these things are written in. And it does matter because there are positives and negatives, as I understand it, to all of the languages that it can be written in. So there might be certain things that something written in one language is better for than something written in another language.
Primarily, the other languages are better for getting it to market faster, not better for long term.
So this is an attempt at a more robust enterprise solution.
That's correct. I think anyone who is serious about this type of thing would recognize that they want it as fast and efficient as possible, running on hardware without any virtual machines that could introduce bugs or incompatibility.
So I'm going to go ahead and just take a second here and say we have some, Brent, you're new here, so right. I know that you're working on or planning on working on a DAC yourself. Right. Do you want to talk at all about that, and maybe if you have any questions for Bytemaster or anything?
Yeah, sure. I've been building up my list of questions.
Well, please feel free, man. Like I just kind of like sit here and moderate a little bit and try to talk about. I'll ask questions all day, but this is actually for all you guys.
Cool. Yeah, Dan, you mentioned the names of the values of the holders of the accounts. You indicated those are controlled by a central authority. What do you mean by that?
I said that they could be controlled by a central authority if you needed to certify the names in the system.
So is there a way to certify names in a system without using a central authority? There is, right?
So this is an opportunity for me to let you guys in on some recent developments with a company called Follow My Vote. You can visit their website at followmyvote.com. They are a small startup that's being incubated in NewSpark, which is associated with Virginia Tech. And they are going to be working with us to build the voting DAC. Right, so starting Monday, they're going to have one or two guys working with us in our office from Follow My Vote to get a DAC out. Now, one of the things you have to do for voting is certify unique identities. You need to say that, yes, you are a U.S. citizen and you are a unique U.S. citizen.
How do you do that? Is this something like they haven't figured out yet, or?
the way you do that is you create an account with the system, and then you take your account and you prove that who you are to some authority. And you may prove it to more than one authority. And then when you have an election, you only count the votes from the accounts that are proven unique by one or more authorities.
So it's almost like a VeriSign type of thing.
Exactly. So what it allows you to do is anyone can vote, and there are like several different ways that you can count the votes, filtering on the different authorities that are certifying it. One is self-signed. All right, these people all say that they are qualified to vote and that they're unique. So we just count all that, and you get one number. And here's all the ones signed by VeriSign. Here's all the ones signed by VeriSign and some other company. And you can kind of get a feel for how it is. And when you define an election, say you're going to do a district election of some kind, you would want to define the authorities that are going to verify uniqueness.
You see, this is actually, you guys just touched on something that was like the best voting, the best DAC to me. Whenever we were talking about Bitcoin, and I was actually learning a lot of it because my professors were really good about allowing me to use Bitcoin as one of my courses of study. So whenever I'd like delve into it and you start seeing the transparency of the blockchain, you understand just the simplest aspect of it would be something like being able to vote. And there have been attempts at it. So it's really cool to see that there's going to be another attempt at it, and we'll see where it goes. But the voting to me is like something that can be ubiquitous really quick. There's a real big spot for people who would like to be able to go out and say, yeah, I can look and verify that my vote counted as what I wanted it to count as. And this seems like the first time that we've had it since we used to count paper ballots. And even then it wasn't even as good as this.
Yeah, and you want to be able to delegate your votes, and you want to be able to change it at any time, real time.
Yeah, real time. And the thing is, there's a guy named Gerald Salente online. He's a trends analyst. He's a really angry, patriotic guy about some of the stuff that's going on, understandably. But he said something that stuck with me a while back, and he said, if you can bank from your phone, you should be able to vote from your phone. And this type of stuff really seems like that's where we're going to be going. And ironically, like, he's a trends analyst and he doesn't know where it's going to pop up, but it is popping up. And that's precisely what he was talking about. I was listening to him say it 2 years ago. So, but continue. Sorry, guys.
So my point is only that our system supports named accounts, and you can have any number of certifications on those named accounts. And if you want to develop a custom solution, you could require that you are the sole individual who can certify accounts. You still have the transparency, but there's nothing wrong with using. These systems don't have to be decentralized. Their goal is transparency and honesty and integrity. Decentralization is just a means or a tactic to make them resilient against government attack, against being shut down. But if you're going to tie this to a centralized company anyway, then you gain a lot of the benefits, and there's no reason to be fully decentralized.
Well, and we're not even talking about necessarily governments, just as much as any institution or group of people who wants to take away people's rights to exist in a free world, right? I mean, is that a safer way of saying it, as far as like perhaps like a better way of saying it as far as where we're going?
In the free market, there is no threat to you just running a node. So the free market's not going to stop you from setting up a central server and running a node and competing in the market. The only person that would stop you from doing that is some kind of government who has declared for whatever reason that they don't like that type of operation. So the only solution is to make it so easy to do and so ubiquitous that the governments don't even try to stop it because they can't.
And some of these, it seems like some of these solutions are going to actually help government officials who are trying to do some like really good work. And it's going to also help them to be more transparent about things, so people can audit what they do, look at what they do. Because let's face it, there are a lot of really trustworthy people out there who would like to do good, but the system's kind of difficult to deal in right now. But if there was a way of people being able to be rewarded based on reputation using these types of blockchain services, then there's a very real way for things like VeriSign to pop up, like where I'm going to step up and provide a VeriSign service, and you can go check out my reputation online. It's on the blockchain. It's unaltered, Well,
this is an excellent example of where it could be possible on a blockchain for a government to have their books open to the public scrutiny in real time.
Wow.
Where
never thought about that.
Where you see where all the money gets allocated to all the departments, where they spend it, on and on and on. In real time, who has control of the funds at what point in time and where they go. Now, what you're going to find is that government officials don't like this type of transparency because it interferes with the way they do business right now.
Assholes.
But at the very least, it's going to require some explaining to the public as this type of technology becomes more prevalent. Why isn't the government transparent in this way? Why aren't our elections being done in this way? Because this is an entirely new way to have an entirely open and transparent government, right down to who's a citizen, who's got arrest records. Every last information can be tracked on a blockchain in a public way.
Wait a second. Are you saying that maybe even like the IRS emails could have been stored on a private blockchain?
You don't need to store emails on a blockchain. That would be a little over the top. But certainly financial records. Although it might be very useful for governments to timestamp all emails, because especially anything that's being used as evidence.
That's a good point.
For the first time, we had the ability to prove that you received or could have received an email that no one else can read but you and the sender. There's all kinds of possibilities with this technology. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit because there's one thing that is hindering the entire industry right now, and that is scalability. If you look at Bitcoin, they currently top out at 7 transactions per second. They could go higher by changing a number in their blockchain, but as soon as they do, bandwidth requirements are going up, and computational power is going up, memory requirements are going up, and it quickly takes Bitcoin out of the hands of the average person. The other systems all suffer from the exact same challenge. They're entirely distributed, and they need, in order to maintain the trust, they need to be in the hands of the users. Take Next, for example. The average user has to forge Next on their machine. I suppose Next has a form of delegated proof of stake where you can assign your forging power to a third party, which is kind of interesting to think about. The reality is that if you want these systems to scale, you need nodes that can process 1,000 transactions per second, store terabytes of data, and do so efficiently and trustworthy while remaining in control of the end user. Delegated proof of stake gives us that power. Eventually, I believe that the delegates will all be running high-end nodes with keeping everything in RAM, having 128 gigabytes of RAM, 32 processors on a hosted location directly connected to the internet backbone. And anyone can, in theory, do that. It's kind of like buying a mining rig, except instead of burning the electricity and on specialized hardware for computing hashes, now you're performing a valuable service at high speed. Yet you don't have control by running these nodes because the shareholders can vote you out at any time. And that allows us to scale in ways that Bitcoin can't. For Bitcoin to scale, it has to become more and more centralized. And for the other proof of stake systems to scale, they've got to figure out a way of how do we decide who to trust with this responsibility of forging blocks, and they have to get enough stake in the hands of the people that have these resources in order to produce the blocks, which basically means that proof of stake without delegated proof of stake doesn't scale.
So, out of curiosity, with regard to delegated proof of stake, and you have these delegates out there. Say I'm one of those delegates, and my delegate, like something, it just goes down for some reason. I have a backup right next to it, but I have to still boot it up and everything. Is that going to be enough to get a delegate kicked off of out of the delegates? And if so, does it? How much is it going to harm them, and how easy would it be for them to get back to where they were before if they were superior in a bunch of different areas?
Well, that's entirely up to the users of the system. If they understand, oh, a hurricane came through and took out power to my entire data center, they probably won't blame you. On the other hand, if you're competing against other delegates that have redundant servers in multiple data centers so that they never go down, they're probably going to be preferred over you if you do go down. So it's all about not being the slowest backpacker.
Gotcha. Another cool thing that seems to me, I've been thinking about what you were saying in past meetups or hangouts that we've had about how different delegates can choose how they're going to reward the people they use. So I guess essentially if somebody went down, it wouldn't matter if I chose somebody because they give 5% of their or 50% of the transaction fees that they charge to the Electronic Frontier Foundation or something else that I personally believe in, or they have a service that goes ahead and gives pays a certain bit to the charity DAC that's created, or some other process. If I feel inclined to go with that because they're providing a service that I like, then I'm going to keep them in. Now, with that said, is there going to be anything that's going to vote them out automatically if their performance goes too low? Is it just going to be me choosing just a thumbs down?
All votes require a transaction, which means all transactions have a transaction fee. That implies that the only time votes can change are when users are already making a transaction. So, by default, whenever you produce a transaction, it will vote for a subset of all the guys who you've given a thumbs up. So you'd have to remove a thumbs up from particular candidates. There is the potential to have a auto voting mode where if you have a client on the network or just observing the behavior of the delegates, could choose to vote on people entirely based upon objective criteria. How many blocks have they missed recently? How do they compare to other candidates? What's their latency? And other performance things. The other thing we can have is the client can automatically warn the users if they have given a thumbs up to a candidate who's not producing blocks. So you might want to vote against this guy or remove your vote from this guy and give it to someone else. So we're going to strongly help and guide the users to make the right choice. But we don't want to have too much auto voting because that can then be subject to manipulation.
I guess this is going to be more of a conversation for when everybody is able to use it and well, mess with it a little bit more to see, because it's kind of, I understand what you're saying to a certain degree, but and I've seen screenshots and I understand the thumbs up and thumbs downs, but perhaps we'll just have to go over it another time, or maybe you can cover it now if you want.
What we've done recently is added some URL handling so that you can actually post a link online, and if you click on it, it'll automatically thumbs up or thumbs down someone in your wallet. So you can be having a discussion on the forum and say, so and so is not doing this, move your approval from them, or hey, I can do better than so and so, give me some approval. And you just click a link and it votes for them, and you can use that anywhere.
So it's almost kind of like in a petition of sorts.
Yes, very much like that.
It's really cool. And I mean, have you guys had any things that have come up where you're like, what is the solution to this? We're not quite sure yet. Or do you feel like you're getting to the point where you don't have any of that you're at this juncture?
Oh, we constantly have things that we need to find solutions for. The most recent example of requiring a solution is the fact that the computational power required to scan Titan transactions to see if they are for you limits the throughput and the number of accounts a user on a single computer can have. It's amazingly computationally expensive to do elliptic curve operations. And so we needed a way, if we were going to scale this to thousands of transactions per second, the end user won't be able to scan 1,000 transactions per second without pegging their CPU. And they probably even then won't be able to keep up. And that's just keeping up. If they fall behind, they'll never be able to catch up. And so that was a scalability issue we had. And also, how do we make lightweight clients for this system? With Bitcoin, you tell some server, hey, monitor these addresses, and they'll notify you when you got payments. You can't do that if no one can see who is the recipient of the funds, because Titan keeps that private. So we've come up with solutions to that are going to make it possible to have entirely web-based wallets, iPhone wallets, and even lightweight desktop wallets as the default mode of operation without the heavy CPU usage. And that is an example of some of the things that, we have to figure out how we're going to do this. And so we figure it out.
Well, it's cool that you guys are doing the web wallet and the web interface thing, because the more that I've thought about it, and I've talked to my wife about this because she's from overseas, and it seems like, from what she says, touchscreen telephones are becoming huge over there because essentially China's just reverse engineering all of our tech and making cheap versions of it. But you're seeing a flood of these touchscreen phones over there, like in almost everybody's hands. So that to me was one of the biggest things as far as the adoption curve, because if you want to have people who use this stuff across the world, a lot of these people don't have a PC at home, but they can carry a little touchscreen phone that gives them complete access to the web.
That's exactly my perspective. It's all about barriers to entry. And right now, if you require someone to have a always on internet connection on a home computer that's secure and has sufficient RAM, CPU, network bandwidth, and disk storage to run the thing, you've limited yourself to a very small percentage of the population, especially because more and more people are moving to tablets. At least the average users are, leaving only power users and those who do produce materials, right? Not the consumers, but the producers. They're the only ones with real computers anymore, and that really hinders widespread adoption.
Well, it's going to be interesting because when you think in terms of somebody who lives, for instance, over in the Philippines is the best example I can give. I know for a fact the average worker over there, even in the financial industry, is going to be making very low sums of money compared to the developed world. The average job over there is like $400 a month. So if you think in terms of the ability that is opened up for them to make a lot more money than they would be able to in their largely corrupt government, there would be a lot more value infused into their economy. So it's mind-blowing to see what could be with these types of technologies.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential, and we've come a long way. Yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of founding of Invictus. And
happy birthday, man.
In that time, we went from concept to functional blockchain with delegated proof of stake and user issued assets. And we've only accelerated since then.
Yeah, I've got three things that I would like to talk about. One, I've got a comment I'd like to make. The other is just a question: how do I get to become a tester? And third, just ask some questions about the Canon coin, which direction I should be able to head.
Let's roll, man. Don't ask permission, just talk. Bytemaster and all of us are cool about it. Uh-oh. He lost his push to talk button.
I'm here.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh. But anyway, yeah. So I'm active in the community out here in the Mountain West, and every time I go to Bitcoin meetups and groups like that, inevitably they'll bring up Ether and some competitors before anyone mentions Ethereum. I mean, what am I saying? Now I'm even using that term. But anyway, I'm always asked those questions. Why are you talking about Ether or some of the competitors to Invictus Innovations rather than this? But I'm always asking them, is there anything in any way that's superior about any of those? And they always just drop their jaw. Yeah, I don't know. It just sounds cool. But the bottom line is, I always point them to the Canonizer web page that we started that's surveying. And it has, and Dan has started a list of some text of how Invictus Innovations technology is vastly superior to Ether. And so I am encouraging them to populate any competitor camps if there's any way any other competing technology is in any way competitor to get that stuff canonized.
How does this work, Brent? Can you explain it to the average person out there who might be a potential user but doesn't know what they would use it for?
Yeah, how do I get a URL to you guys?
You just go ahead and But the reason I'm asking if you can describe it is because we actually post these to the web page, and then people have access to listen to them at any time.
Yeah, I'd like to make a quick comment on what he's already said.
Sure.
So what people always mention Ethereum versus Bitshares, and I'd like to. I recently looked up some stats on what's their development progress look like compared to our development progress. And in the past month, Ethereum has had 9 authors push 74 commits to all branches. We have had 18 authors push 833 commits. So yeah, there's a massive difference in the rate of development between Ethereum and us right now.
We should get that canonized in the topic, another superior attribute of us over them.
So is canonizing like essentially adding attributes to a certain object that, like, in a decentralized fashion?
You can go ahead and explain it, Ben. It's your thing.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, Dan's done some of this stuff more, so he's probably more of an expert than I am. So I'd be happy to hear anything he might have to contribute. But basically, Canonizer is a consensus building system that takes a concept. Basically, Wikipedia, it's a Wikipedia, decentralized Wikipedia-like system that solves the problem Wikipedia has. The big problem Wikipedia has is it breaks down anytime anything's at all controversial, as long as it's encyclopedia. But the bottom line is, if you go to that topic there, so there's the two problems. There's the edit wars. If there's anything controversial, then people find whatever they disagree on, and they spend their eternal time in eternal yes/no arguments, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, trying to go back and forth, despite the fact that there's usually some more important overriding issue that they agree on, that everyone needs to focus around. And so it gets around that. And then it also provides a rigorous measure of expert consensus. For example, since you can join a camp, so in other words, we solve both of those problems by creating a wiki system with camps. So the yes people can create a yes camp, the no people can create a no camp, and then each of the yes people can wiki their camp, the no people can create wiki their camp. And if you find any disagreements, lesser important disagreements, instead of focusing on those, you push those down to subcamps. So that allows you to keep the consensus on the most important issues and push the lesser issues down into subcamps. So the bottom line is this gives you a rigorous measure of expert consensus. So you can see 69% of the experts that I trust agree that Ethereum or Bitshares is superior to Ethereum, and or anything like that. So it solves both the edit wars and the reliable measure of information, both of those problems, by creating camps that people can join.
Now, out of curiosity, is there like a point system where people who add to it, kind of like how Yahoo Questions or Yahoo Answers does it, or something to that effect, where we're actually adding content gives you, canon coins or something like that?
Well, first off, it's centralized. It's based on nothing can be censored. So if you're a supporter of a camp, you get control of that camp, and no one can change that camp. When someone submits a change to a camp, it goes through a 1-week review period before that change will go live, and the primary supporters of that camp get a notification that if no one objects to this proposed change, it will go live in 1 week. And so that gives people control over every camp.
So essentially, if I put in information and this camp and this camp and this camp reject me, and there's just no camp that seems to be the correct niche for the viewpoint that I hold, I can create my own camp now.
Exactly. But if you create, and the other problem is let's say you've got 5,000 people in one camp, and they want to make this improvement. So, sorry about that. My wife's dogs are causing problems. Anyway, so if they want to make an improvement, let's say there's one guy in that camp that's objecting to a particular change, then the group of people can then just say, let me.
He's a killer, man. You can tell he's like a little ankle biter.
Yeah, so he's got a pretty interesting system for organizing discussion and debate. It's probably a little bit more involved type of discussion forum than you would see Bitcoin talk or Bitshares talk. And it takes a little bit more thought on behalf of the users. So I think it appeals very much to a certain type of individual.
I think it's.
Sorry, I'm back.
Yeah, go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, but basically that's the whole idea. So if you go to that link, where it says best technology to use for distributed autonomous organizations, I guess I need to update that to DACs. But you can see Invictus Innovations at the top, and if you click on that camp, you can see all the advantages Invictus Innovations has over Ethereum. And so far, I've been working really hard. I talked to Vitalik Buterin, trying to get him to at least stick a few ideas that he had, how his product was superior. But despite all my efforts, I haven't been able to get anyone to contribute anything to that camp, which is a sign that it's an inferior camp, even though it's more popular.
Well, there are many characteristics of what will make something successful. You have to have the right ideas, and you have to have the ability to execute on them. And what these other communities have, they have strengths where we have weaknesses, and vice versa. I just posted a link of stuff on our wiki, comparison of Bitshares with other platforms. And it's something that the community has been working on, and it really highlights what makes us unique and how we encompass the full picture. Although I noticed that Ethereum is not on this list. So I'll need to talk to them about Ethereum.
Interesting.
Is there a reason for it? I mean, it seems like they only have like a kind of like a play blockchain right now that's not really what they're hoping to have as a final product. Might that be the reason why?
I mean, our blockchain is still in the play blockchain stage, but I think what people don't realize is that there's a lot of work that goes into creating these blockchains, and we've got some really smart people working with us, and it's really easy to get a proof of concept done. I had a proof of concept of our system complete in a couple weeks back in January, and it's taken 4 or 5 months to take that proof of concept system and get to something that's distributed and where we want it to be for release. And now we are just discovering, all right, well, where are all the performance issues? What happens when you actually throw 20 transactions per second at the network, or 100 transactions per second? And those are all things that these other projects are going to have to address when the time comes. And if they have magic developers that are able to write high performance code the first time without any bugs and get it out there, then more power to them. But I think most of what's going on right now is a war in marketing, and it's quite clear that our marketing and ability to execute on that front is far weaker than the competition. So these systems as a whole, you need to compare based upon marketing power as well as technological power, because they both contribute to the success or failure of a particular system.
Can I kind of budge in real quick with regard to that?
Sure.
I have this thought in my head about essentially if we could get enough people to start going out and actually using this type of technology to improve businesses that are currently losing a lot of business in some way, shape, or form, to make them more efficient in some way, to improve them and essentially set it up so they want to promote the fact that they're using this technology. You see what I'm saying? Make it so it might be free to do it for a couple businesses. For instance, Overstock. Consult with them at some point to give them this type of technology to use. And then once you see different companies, it might even be a smaller companies. It doesn't have to be something really large, but that would actually give an incentive for them to promote the product, almost so to the point where you wouldn't have to worry so much about actually promoting it yourself. Does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And if you think about how we've divided the role, our company is focused on producing the best technology. Others, like these altcoins, can take our technology and compete with the best marketing. I do think that our marketing power might not be as good before we have a product, but once we have a product, I think that you're going to see some pretty impressive marketing strategies come from our system that the other communities aren't going to be able to match.
I agree. I feel like once we have a product, we're going to see a little bit of a shift, and I think even some community members are really going to start to step up and push pretty hard to get the word out.
I feel like I mean, this might just be me, but it seems like there is a little bit of a shift already occurring now that it's starting to get into these delegate testing phases are getting to the point where it's, everything seems to be working, on a core level.
I think as soon as we are able to start leveraging the actual market cap value of our products and use dilution, I think funding will be a non-existent problem for us and will be a big advantage for us over all the competitors. If we're able to do that, funding could be grown at a real ridiculous rate.
And you know what? It makes sense. I think people might be a little bit less frustrated by the concept of quote unquote dilution as the prices are going up in their investments. So that's a good point.
I think that, like all things, the concept of dilution is going to take some time to sink in, because initially it's absolutely repulsive to those of us who hate inflation.
Well, like you've said in the past, and it's true. If the reason for quote unquote dilution actually ends up making all of the shares worth more, then it actually wasn't dilution. But the key is finding something that's going to bring the value up. Well, it's never going to be a guarantee, so it's a risk, and what do you think? You think it's the risk that people are concerned about?
Maybe we even change the word from dilution to like reinvestment or something. I don't know, just a better way to market it.
Well,
certainly we don't want to market dilution. We want to market the what the money's being used for. Self-funded development.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I noticed that Bytemaster pointed out the wiki for why choose Bitshares, and if I might just throw a pitch out there for Canonizer, the problem with that is it's a wiki system. So if you start asking for competitors from Ethereum and other things to come in and join in on that wiki, of course it's going to be controversial and you're going to get edit wars and things are going to break down real quick. And so people are going to say, well, only edit that document if you're a Bitshares fan, and then no one will trust it because it's going to be obviously biased to Bitshares. But if you switch that over, if everyone points to the topic that I just linked to on canonizer.com, then you can encourage Ethereum fans and all the competitor fans, you guys build your camp. Let's see if there's something really there that the technical experts agree is superior than our camp. And then you get people voting, and then you get all points of view come in, and then you get some real rigorous measure of what do the experts really think is superior technology. And then it becomes more of what's a superior technology as opposed to what has a better marketing campaign.
I think that the thing we want to do is link to what you're doing here. This particular wiki, it's in wiki form, but it's a closed wiki. Only members of our community can edit it.
And there goes the reputation. So any competitors' camp aren't going to trust it as much.
Well, the point is, it's the place where our guys can work together to get the information out there. It's just basically us communicating to everyone else. It's not about whether or not this is authority. Its authority is trust in us, whereas your authority is trust in your system. And I think that what we would like to do is link this table over to your system to debate various things. Most of this thing is just facts, what features are there, what are the performance metrics and things like that. And of course, if we get new information from various projects, we try to keep it updated. This is actually probably more accurate about our competitors than it is about us. I keep having to tweak things, which shows you how bad our communication is.
Cool. Yeah. I'll have to integrate some of that information in Canonizer, and we'll definitely have to work on cross-linking those pages. Good idea.
Out of curiosity, what do you mean by cross-linking? Or is it going to be possible to just essentially take this text and just move it over to Canonizer, or are you actually just talking about links?
Someone will have to take the information there and edit it into the Canonizer camp for Bitshares, and also add a link to that wiki page, and if we can get a link on that wiki page to point over to this camp to say, here, if you want some unbiased information from all points of view, consensus building expert, go check out this page, and or work that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I will point out that if you're going to have a debate or discussion on which technology is the best, that best in what respect, by what metric? Technologically the best, or user acceptance the best? And the biggest example I have of that, where there's a difference between the two, is Mac versus Windows, Android versus iPhone. You can be technologically the best in hardware, but behind on user experience. You can be far ahead on user experience, but so a lot of the Android phones might be technologically superior to the iPhone. But on the OS side, Windows has long been, in my opinion, inferior to what Apple's had, and Apple's been years ahead, but they lost the market share war. So from a perspective of which community to get involved in, sometimes just comparing technical specifications is not enough, and that is something we need to be well aware of in everything that we're doing and in these debates. So it'd be very interesting to see how you can frame the Canonizer discussion around, all right, we're just looking at technological superiority as an independent debate from market superiority.
Yeah, that's exactly how the root level camp statement works. Basically, the root level camp, everyone supports that, and that's where you define exactly what the survey question is about. What's the goal of this thing, and what are the rules of operation and all that. That is defined in the root level camp, and so you just start out with a general idea, who's better, and you don't really define it. And then as more and more people start joining, then you start having to fork out and have multiple survey topics, one for who's best market share, another one for who's technically superior, and then you can start having subtopics. But the bottom line is there's a way to handle that kind of stuff to progress it so that everything moves forward and builds consensus and builds a large group that can still find what they agree on and push the disagreeable stuff to other topics or subcamps.
All right, so can we wrap this up with any closing questions or comments?
Yeah, I just got one quick question. How, if I wanted to get involved as a tester and start trading and creating assets and stuff like that, is there like a simple step how to do that or something like that? Or can someone point me to a reference to that so I can, because I'd like to start figuring out how that stuff works.
The easiest way to get involved right now is to go to the bitsharestalk.org, go to the bank and exchange section. There is a dry run 7 thread, and anytime we upgrade to a new test chain, we close the previous thread and link to the new one. It gives you instructions there, and if you have any questions, you can post in that thread, and everyone else who's testing will be able to help you resolve things. If people find bugs, they post them there, and that's where all the active day-to-day testing discussion is going on.
Sweet, thanks. That's what I needed.
We can also add you to the developers thread or Skype group discussion if you're interested.
Yes, definitely. Thanks.
Well, then I guess this meeting is adjourned. thank you again, Bytemaster, for answering our questions and giving us updates this week. Thank you, Brent, for showing up, who is creating Canonizer and Canonizer Coin, which is going to be a DAC that he wants to
Canon Coin, yeah.
Or Canon Coin. My apologies. That you'll be using the Bitshares toolkit. Is that correct?
Well, I'm still working through that, but basically, yeah, it's canonizer.com going cryptographically IPO, sort of, yeah.
It's really cool, man. Well, I invite you to come on anytime you want, and I know that everybody else would like to hear from you again. You added some cool stuff today.
Thanks.
So, heck
Yeah, I would
man.
actually like to see you do your Canonizer IPO with delegates and the reinvestment strategy.
Yeah, I've got to get my head around all that.
Yeah, the basic idea being that you can start out with initial shares allocated to your current Canonizer users as well as the AGS PTS users.
Right.
And then issue all remaining shares to the delegates who then compete to grow your platform.
Out of curiosity, would it be possible to use something like Canonizer to actually ascertain what are the most trustworthy delegates, or the most for different categories? Almost, I can see popping up like this is the most trustworthy. This is the one.
Exactly. Yep.
So it seems to me like that might actually help you with what Bytemaster is saying too.
It could work dramatically for having all statements on your site by users signed. Have users log into your website with the accounts from your system. There's so many things you could do. For those of you who don't know, he's already got a reward system / points, and he wants to convert those to a crypto coin of some kind. And I think that
Right.
you can encode those types of things directly into the blockchain. So everything you're currently doing on your website can be encoded on the blockchain. And then that can be run in decentralized, and then people can buy into it and they can post, and users can be certified and get which camps they belong associated with their accounts, and so on and so forth. So there's lots of things you can do there. With the way our system is currently set up, you can model anything you can model with a database and a set of operations, you can model on a blockchain. And our interface is all web-based, so now it's just like building a website that happens to be decentralized.
So cool.
I've learned a lot. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, man. And thank you, Bytemaster. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Gamey, for doing for always being here, man. Really, thank you. And Agent, how's it going, brother?
Pretty good. Sorry I was late and missed most of everything, but
It's all good. We had a good time today.